Hey, I'm Isaac and I've been shooting with my FX6 for the last 2.5 years. The rigging has slowly evolved over time. I actually used to have a bit more of a cage and a bit more accessories on here, but I've really tried to consolidate and have everything I need and nothing else for a really well-balanced rig. And I think I've finally achieved it in what is hopefully my FX6's final form. And today I'd love to share it with you. I love the handheld look, and that's also how I prefer shooting. So this rig is optimized for a low center of gravity and a bit of weight, but not so much that I start fatiguing after a while. I'll sometimes use a cine pillow, and if it's a really long take, I'll use a monopod or a tripod, but most of the time it is handheld. One thing I really wanted from this rig is the ability to get to set, pull the camera out of the bag and just start shooting. So no need to attach batteries, monitors, or anything else. I just wanted to reach in the camera bag, pull it out, turn it on, and get to work. Especially when we're doing run and gun jobs where we're running around to all different locations, the ability to have essentially no teardown or setup time was something that was really important to me. This is my favorite camera bag of all time. Now, if you're traveling, I'm sure a Pelican would be a better option for you as it's a hard case that gives absolute protection and would be better than this. But for me, everywhere I go, I just drive to. So I just have this in the boot or on the back seat. And when I get somewhere, I can just chuck it down, open the top because it's a doctor's bag, and then just pull out my camera like so, and then start shooting. So especially when we're running and gunning to different locations, being able to set up and tear down so quickly is just amazing. And there's also so much more storage space in this bag. So here's the neck strap, which you can use, and then you can open the top like so. And then I've got my FX6 just sitting here, which I can pull out easily. And then from here, I've also got a couple of other compartments. So firstly, there's this whole spot here where an FX3 or other B camera will usually sit. I've got this spot down here for other accessories. So I've got a V-mount battery, but there's plenty of room for heaps more. And then I have my lens collection here as well. So I've got one lens here, two little lenses here, and then sneakily under here, I've got the Sony Anamorphic lens. So that means I've got 5 lenses, a big fully built FX6 ready to go, as well as room for at least one more camera and a whole bunch of accessories. So this fits everything I need all in the one bag, and it's super easy to get into and get out of. I went with a Tilta FX6 cage that it seems like everybody's using, and that's mainly because I wanted the ability to mount a V-mount at the back, and I want it held on there really strong, mounted to the body, rather than having some rails out the back. So I bought the full Tilta kit. I originally had the Tilta bottom rail on here with the rods coming out, and that gave me somewhere to mount my follow focus. But I found after a while that I preferred focusing with the lens directly rather than using a manual follow focus. So after taking off the manual follow focus, there was no reason to have the rails on there anymore. So I took off the whole Tilta bottom plate, and now I've just got a long man photo plate there. I actually found that I prefer this a lot. It means that all the weight's lower and the camera's not as tall and awkward, and I never find a need for having the rails on the bottom, so this has worked out well for me. After taking off the bottom plate, there was nowhere for the Tilta side plate to mount, so I took that off. I didn't have any regrets because even though it had a whole bunch of mounting points, I found I could never use them as it would always be in the way of my hand when operating the camera. The mounts that are there, I think are for a wireless video transmitter. I instead have that mounted up a bit higher up here on the monitor. I only use wireless video transmission about 1/4 of the time, and here it's totally fine. It doesn't get in the way of anything, and I don't feel like I'm missing anything by not having the bottom or side plates for my use of this camera. For audio, I absolutely loved all the versatility I got from using the audio top handle on the FX6. Having the 2 XLR inputs, as well as the digital hot shoe that I could put my homemade XLR K3M on, it meant it could do absolutely everything I needed audio-wise. My usual audio setup was to have an NTG5 on camera plugged into one of the XLR inputs, and then having wireless lapels transferring audio onto camera so that way I can monitor while shooting. After about a year of editing footage from the FX6, I found I always used the external audio from wireless transmitters or separately recorded, and I never used the on-camera shotgun audio, even though it was really good quality. So I decided to try something different and take off the audio top handle in an attempt to move this monitor much lower down on the camera to reduce its center of gravity and reduce a bit of weight. And I felt like I wouldn't actually regret this, as after a year of having that shotgun audio on camera and never using it, it didn't feel like I was going to miss it. Here's a few shots of me with the original rig. You can see how I've got everything I need with that audio handle and big monitor, but it's just so top heavy, and so something had to go, and I didn't want to give up my 7-inch monitor. Around this time, I was also getting frustrated with how difficult it was to get some audio files off the Rode Wireless Go 2s, plugging them in and then using the Rode app, and it just seemed incredibly slow, and the 30-minute chunks, I was just not enjoying it. So I decided to upgrade to some Technical Track E's, which are 32-bit audio recorders that use timecode. So this meant I couldn't easily monitor the audio on the camera itself, but I could use the app and Bluetooth headphones, which was actually really nice, even though there's a bit of lag. and it definitely made the post-production workflow way easier, both having timecode and just copying a file off really quick off the device itself using USB, rather than having to use some third-party software. This meant I needed to put a technical sync on my FX6 to keep everything in sync. So I just decided to put it here between the V-mount and the internal monitor on the back of the camera. I just got a little bit of Velcro and wrapped it around the back of the camera, and then the technical sync or technical tracker, you can just stick directly to that, and there's not too much wiggle there, so I don't get any sound. It's easy to remove, and because it's so light, it just sits there and you sort of don't really even notice it, and it's nice and close to all the cable inputs. After doing a bunch of jobs with a technical system, I much prefer this over the way I was previously doing things with Rode Wireless Go 2s. Just getting all the files off easier, having time code so everything just works perfectly. It just seems nicer, and post-production feels a bit less frustrating as everything just comes together super easy. Now, I have had a couple of jobs since where I really needed on-camera audio. One in particular, I was shooting this huge robotic remote-controlled lawnmower that was just the loudest thing I've ever heard, and I needed to have something on camera as there's no way I could have somebody else running through the bushes trying to record audio. And I found a good solution for that. I just got the Rode Video Micro, mounted it here to the front of the camera, and then plugged that into a Technical Track E, which is the 32-bit audio recorder, and mounted that here instead of the little timecode generator. Now I could plug that into the camera, so this was both outputting timecode to the camera as well as recording 32-bit audio from the Video Micro. Now in this case, that was perfect because the volume level kept changing dramatically, so having a 32-bit audio file was exactly what I needed rather than having to play with the dials for internal recording on the FX6. Now I'm sure the NTG5 has 10 times better audio quality than this Video Micro, but I was actually super happy with the audio quality. I was surprised how good it was. So although the NTG5 and the audio handle would give me superior audio, this does more than good enough for on-camera audio for anything I'm ever shooting. Because I don't need on-camera audio most of the time, I'll actually remove this whole rod, which is just mounted on this one point here, and that makes the rig just a bit lighter and a bit nicer to work with. If there's any chance I need on-camera audio, I'll chuck this back on before the job starts. I have found that because it's so small and light, I actually don't really notice it, whereas when you have the big handle and the bigger NTG5 hanging out, it adds a lot more bulk. Like this is much shorter than any lens, whereas when I had the NTG5, it would overhang the lens slightly, and it just meant it was harder to put in your camera bag and take out without having to adjust things. So long story short, I've got the audio camera tucked away behind me, and I'm happy to put it on if I ever do need it. But for everything I've been shooting lately, either this little on-camera mic or the wireless transmitters is all I need, and I love how small and tight this feels without the handle adding bulk. Now for monitors, which is my favorite bit. I love having a big 7-inch monitor rather than a little 5-inch. Maybe that's just because I'm 40 and my eyesight's starting to go, or maybe just because I really love high, big quality images. But whatever the reason, I love having this 7-inch on here, and I don't ever want to go back to a smaller monitor. I also love having it on axis with the lens, so I much prefer having it centered on camera rather than having it coming off one side, just because it feels weird to me looking here, but the camera's over here. I don't know why, maybe I'm a weirdo. And so for that reason, I've got this on top, on center of the camera, and I've also got the internal monitor also mounted here. This one I care less about as far as being perfectly centered with the camera, so I'd be happy to have this hanging out the side, but having it this way feels nice and neat, and it fits into the camera bag super easy as there's no overhang anywhere, and I don't need to add and remove things when I'm packing and unpacking the camera rig. The reason I love having two monitors is because I like having a clean feed on the big monitor, so I can just see exactly what I'm shooting and I'm not distracted by waveforms, focus peaking, or any other tools. But then at the same time, I can just glance down to the little monitor and see exactly what my camera settings are at any time, or how long I've been recording and all that kind of data without having to toggle things on and off. I rarely use touch tracking, but it is nice to not lose that functionality by keeping this on here. I've also had one occasion where I turned the camera on and there was no output to the external monitor, and somehow the internal battery had discharged, so you had to enter the time and date. And at this stage, I didn't have the internal monitor on there, so I couldn't see what was going on. The camera was turned on and there was no monitor output. Once I plugged this in, I could use that to set the date, and then the camera booted up and we got back to having the external video feed. But I was just worried that if I ever got to a job without this, maybe I could mash buttons and set some random date and get the camera started. But I didn't want to experience that on a job. So I'm having this here both for touch tracking and for data, and for that one-off chance where I turn the camera on and it's on a setting screen rather than ready to shoot. I'll show you how these monitors are mounted. So firstly, for the internal monitor, I just have a rod running through the back here, mounted to the back of the top plate. And then onto that, I've just got the factory Sony arm, and then it tilts back here. For the external monitor, I've got this in a cage, and that's pretty much just to give me a NATO rail on the bottom that's nice and fitted. I don't like using monitors with a single screw because they start to rotate when you turn the monitor and start unscrewing, whereas this, that would never happen. You can just wiggle this all day long and it'll never start unscrewing itself. For mounting the monitor, I've put a big NATO route right where the factory audio handle goes. And on top of that, I've got a NATO to NATO small rig adapter that just clips to that and the bottom of the monitor cage. And it's a super secure connection as it's NATO both sides. So there's no unscrewing no matter what you do. And this is actually a perfect amount of friction to do anything I want to do. I can even flip this monitor a whole 180 and everything works fine. As for cable management, I can't take credit for that. I got my friend Daniel to help me out with this. He's so much better at this kind of thing. So I've just mounted a couple of sprigs onto the top plate itself, which are just little plastic clamps that hold cables in place. From there, we've just looped the cables around a couple of times, trying to strike a balance between keeping it small, tight and neat, but also not so tight or in place that you can't move stuff around a bit. I wanted the cables to feel a little bit loose, so as I move the monitor around, everything can move freely and there's no tension or torque on the cables that could damage them. As for the cables themselves, I'm using a D-tap to locking barrel connector to power the external monitor, and then I'm feeding it signal via SDI. I prefer this cable. It just feels more rugged and resilient and less likely to break, both the cable and the connectors themselves. And this frees up my HDMI port on the camera for wireless video transmission whenever I need to do that. We've done the same with all of the other cables as well. So you can see the shotgun cable here is loose enough that there's no excess tension that could damage it, but it's also tight enough and out of the way that I can operate the camera and this will never be dangling down or getting in the way of anything. All of the cables are like this. So I've got some cables tucked in behind the gap where the V-mount battery is to try and keep them out of the way, but also allow us to get to them when we need to. Because I use Timecode so much, I have the Timecode input cable permanently attached. So that's this BNC to 3.5mm cable here. Because it's permanently attached, we could route it all neatly, and again, it doesn't get in the way, and it's super convenient to plug in the timecode generator before I start any job. Speaking of power, I wanted everything to just run off one V-mount battery. So this means the camera body itself, as well as the external monitor, the wireless video transmitter, and anything else that I attach to the camera. I love this because it means I just have to charge 1 or 2 V-mount batteries before a job, rather than having a whole bunch of different types of batteries I had to charge. I actually think this whole rig looks pretty clean and tidy without cables dangling everywhere, especially when you consider how many cables are actually on this body. As for storage and media, I really wanted the ability to be able to shoot all day without having to micromanage my battery levels or looking at how much card space I've got left. So for memory cards, I've got a 480GB CF Express A and a 512GB SD card. And this is great because I wipe them before every job. And no matter how long we're shooting for or how much content we're shooting, I've never run out of space and I don't need to even pay attention to how much storage is left on the card. For batteries, I've just got a couple of 100 Wh V-mounts, and this is actually working perfectly fine for now. I have had to swap sometimes halfway through a big job to put a second battery on, but it hasn't bothered me. One battery swap on a whole big shoot is no big deal at all to me. If I was buying more batteries in future, maybe I'd get 150 or 200 Wh just to have a big one on call. But most of the things I shoot, the 2 V-mount batteries, I just have one on the camera and one on the external monitor for the clients. And that's enough power for the whole shoot just from those 2 batteries. As for filters, I'm using the Freewell magnetic ND system. So I'm using 77mm here, and I've got a ring attached to each of my lenses. If the lens is smaller than 77mm, I just have a 77mm step-up ring and then the magnetic filter mounted to the front of that. This is awesome because I can just quickly attach or remove any filter just like that. So I've got some glow mist filters, some ND filters, and some other stuff, and they all just mount perfectly. And it also has threads on the front. So even though it's a magnetic attach, I can also thread in like a diopter or some other special purpose filters that I rarely use. These guys have never sponsored me or anything. I've just been using this product for years and absolutely love it. I've got a nice filter pack that I've got all my NDs and glow filters and everything else. So I can just pull that out, grab whatever filter I need, and just attach it to the front of the camera in a second. There's no threading or anything like that. And I also keep a couple of my special purpose filters in that bag. As for a matte box, I just have the basic small rig carbon fiber mini matte box. Now this works perfectly fine for me because I rarely use it. And I just have the mounting rings on 2 of my lenses. I've got them on my 50mm Anamorphic and my 24-105. And the main reason I put this on is honestly if I'm shooting with a client who I think cares about the image of the camera. So I'll chuck this on the front to try and impress them. But honestly, most clients don't care. They're already impressed with the rig anyway, or they just don't care. They just want a good quality footage. And so I find that I feel kind of a little bit fancier with this on the front, impressing people, but honestly, nobody really cares. So I rarely use it. And the cool thing about the magnetic filters is I can still use those even when the matte box is on there, which seems useless having a matte box with no filters in there, but it actually does everything I want. I have actually needed this flap once or twice in the last couple of years when I've been shooting something and the sun's coming in at a weird angle or there's some other light, and I've actually reached and put this on just for the actual flap on the top there. That's only once or twice, so 99% of the time it's either sitting in the bag or it's on there to impress people, not for functional reasons. And when I'm looking to buy a new filter, I'll always get the magnetic one because that'll work on all of my cameras rather than just the ones that have a matte box attached, and they're usually a lot cheaper than the big ones you need to fill out a matte box. There's a few other things I'll keep in my camera bag as well. The first is a color checker passport. Now I don't use this much, usually only when I'm in a weird lighting condition where I think it might help me. So if we're shooting in a really dimly lit gym with weird artificial lights, I'll do my best to dial in white balance in camera, but I'll also get a shot of the color checker passport. And sometimes it does help me in post-production to try and clean up the colors. Most of the time though, I just have the camera set at 5600 or do a custom white balance and I don't bother with it. I'll also keep a bottle of water in the camera bag because I often get thirsty when I'm shooting. And if it's a longer shoot, I'll chuck in a protein bar or some other snack as well, because you never know when you'll get an opportunity to eat, and I really don't want to get hangry. I also keep some business cards in my bag because I often find if we're shooting in a gym or some other public sort of place, people see me interacting with a client, seems friendly and cool, so they'll come up and ask for my details, and it's so easy to give them a business card rather than stand there and try and explain my Instagram handle or something, so I can get in contact with that person really quickly, but I'm also not getting distracted for what I'm actually there for, dealing with my current client. Before the FX6, I had two FX3s, and I thought when I first bought this that I'd use this on some jobs and then use the FX3 on a bunch of other jobs. But what's actually happened is I just use the FX6 all the time and only use the FX3 if I need a B camera or if I need a camera on a gimbal, which I find the FX3 is much better at. So the rest of the time, I'm always using this. Even if it's a quick run and gun job, I love just being able to use this, rock up to a location, use those variable NDs. It's so much easier to operate. I've got all the buttons and it just feels amazing to use. I'd never want to go back to the FX3. I do love shooting this with the FX3 as a B cam, as I've never had to worry about color matching footage. Even when I shoot on two different Fuji cameras, I'll often find that, the colors are different between them and I need to do a bit of adjustments to the B cam. But when I'm shooting FX3 and FX6, I honestly can't tell which footage is which unless I do some super high ISO test or something like that, but they just cut together perfectly. So I think this is the perfect A cam, and the B cam of FX3 is great, but you'll find you won't use it much as you'll always prefer using this. One area I thought the FX3 would definitely win is run and gun vertical content, where we just run around handheld with a couple of FX3s, holding them vertical, getting all the content we need when we've only got an hour shooting time for stuff like that. However, I found that holding this, pressing it up against your chest and then tilting the monitor towards you, I actually love shooting vertical content like this, and I can still get all the benefits of a small run and gun rig just like this, and there's no real downsides. Because it's in my chest and so close to me, I'm getting great image stabilization, even though there's no image stabilization in this body. So yeah, the one place I thought the FX3 would win, this is actually even better. And so now the FX3 is only used for a B cam, or if I need a gimbal cam, where I'm not even gonna try and bother rigging this up because I just want a small light run and gun setup with the gimbal, and this frees this up to do all the other shooting on the job. I've been through about 15 different lenses since starting with the Sony ecosystem, and these are my top 5 by far. So firstly, we've got the 24-105. Now, if you can only have one lens for your FX6, this is definitely the one I'd recommend. It's so versatile, and once you get beyond 50mm, you get epically good background blur anyway, that I feel like you don't need a prime lens if you've only got a one lens kit. And I love the IBIS, and I feel like if there's any run and gun job where I don't know what I'm getting myself into, I'll just slap this on the FX6 and I can go for it, and I'm always super happy with the results I get because it's such a versatile lens. Next, if you were going to get a second lens, I'd just recommend the 35mm. It's actually a pretty small lens, and I've got my filters to get the magnetic 77mm adapter on there. This is really good because you can shoot super close to stuff and get a nice close-up, or you can stand back, take in a bit more, and you still get that nice f1.8 background blur. I've never used this lens and felt like I wanted more, so you could get the f1.4 version if you want, but honestly, I've been super happy with this and see no need to upgrade. Next, there's the 50mm 1.8. Now, the main advantage of this is price. I got this for $100 off Marketplace, and although I don't use it much, it's usually mattered to a B camera or a C camera. It's well and truly paid itself off, given that it only costs such a small amount of money. So that's almost a why not when it's so cheap. Next is the 20mm f1.8. Now, I also had the 14mm previously, and that's even wider than this, but I found that I never actually used the 14mm, so I ended up selling it because I always use this. Now, the cool things about this compared to the 24-105 is firstly, it's a bit wider in that it's 20mm instead of 24. Second, you're getting heaps of that background blur because it's f1.8 instead of f4. And thirdly, it's smaller and lighter. So if you're shooting a vlog or a little handheld thing, it's nice having a smaller, lighter lens. So it's got 3 reasons it differentiates itself from the 24-105. So it's definitely worthy of my kit. And finally, there's the 50mm t2.9 anamorphic lens from Sirui. I just love this. I love all the anamorphic lens flares and just that cool look. It just makes me excited to shoot. Now, I think half my clients would never notice if I'm using this. And sometimes I use it on client jobs when I don't need to, but it's fun for me. And as they're watching the footage when we're playing it back, I'll point out the lens flares and get them excited for it. I'll be like, yeah, we're shooting a movie here. See these lens flares, just like in a movie, and they get excited. And I feel like I have to show them the value, but once they see it, they get excited and want more of it as well. It's definitely the lens I use the least, because the other lenses, just for most jobs I'm doing, it's sort of more boring corporate stuff or run and gun stuff where I want autofocus or other stuff like that. So I love using this, but it does get the least usage out of all of these. A few other lenses that I really liked, but I found I didn't use much, so I ended up selling them. One's the 14mm. It's absolutely amazing and gives a unique look, but I never needed to shoot that wide. There's the 70-200. That's another great lens. Again, I didn't use it enough to justify it. I found going to 105mm on the 24-105 was good enough for everything I needed. So it was a great lens that just sat there collecting dust. There's also the 90mm macro. Now I got that because I wanted to shoot some macro close-up details of some things, but again, I found I was using it very rarely. So I just bought a couple of diopters that I attached to the front of other lenses, and that allows me to get close enough to get those few detail shots when I needed them. So I moved on the 90mm as well. There was also the 85, but I found it most times I was just using the 50mm when I sort of want to separate the subject from the background, and the 85 was even better at that, but I just never used it, so that had to go. In conclusion, I absolutely love this camera. I've been through a lot of cameras over the years. I've been shooting for about 20 years, and I've got a bad case of gas, so we're always buying new cameras. This feels like the first camera I'm going to keep for more than a couple of years. Usually there's a 2-year upgrade cycle for me. This feels like something I'll keep for at least for 5 years. Now, it's not perfect. There's heaps of ways Sony could improve this with a Mark II. We could have an 8K sensor, we could have IBIS, we could have internal audio, 32-bit, all those kind of things. But I think even if they did bring out a camera like that, this is still more than good enough and will do every job I need it to do for the next 5 years. So I'm very happy with my purchase. And if you're thinking about getting one, definitely get one. If you've got any questions about the camera or the rig, or if you've got any feedback, I'd love to hear that in the comment section below. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys in the next video.